Testing 1, 2, 3. There we go. We're working. Thank you very much, everybody. And I see we've just ticked round to exactly 11 o'clock. So we'll maybe start as we mean to go on and crack on with the event this morning. So you're very, very welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for turning out for this launch of our research report this morning. Thank you to everybody online who's logged in as well, because we're live streaming this event as well. Housekeeping, the toilets are out on the corridor there. I understand there's no alarms planned for the session, so we'll deal with that if and when it happens. Hopefully it doesn't. I would make an appeal, please don't switch off your phones. If you put them on silent or on mute and so on, and get tweeting on social media with the hashtag #GetReadyForUC. That means people in the audience and people watching online can get involved in the discussion and the debate and let us know your views and so on. So please do get engaged in all of that. So hopefully everyone is in the right room. Hopefully everybody has clicked on the right link and we're attending the right event, and we'll start. To get us started, just please sit back and enjoy what we plan to be the first in a series of animations aimed at raising awareness about Move to UC, and also with easing the pressure and stress that undoubtedly, some people may be feeling as they hear more and more about this initiative. I think there should be. So thank you very much for that. I thought we'd just a good icebreaker, and just as I said, that was a general overview, if you like, and we do plan other animations in the series which will focus, for example, on specific steps that people will need to take to prepare to claim UC, ways to prove your identity and gathering additional information, for example, for housing costs or for childcare and so on. But the aim will always be to be jargon-free, to be helpful, and all from the point of view of trying to, ease pressure, ease stress, and hopefully we all get through the Move to UC in one piece and out the other end. Can I welcome, firstly, Kelly Armstrong, our MLA sponsor for this event, and invite Kelly to introduce the session. Kelly's Alliance MLA for Strangford and was, of course, Deputy Chair of the Communities Committee, so is very familiar with all things social security, welfare reform, and particularly Move to Universal Credit. So thank you, Kelly, for doing that for us.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for coming up to Stormont. I don't believe that there's many other MLAs in the room today, but I'm hoping some will be watching this as it's live streamed. The move to universal credit, I'll be very honest, terrifies the life out of me. I'm a constituency MLA, and on a day-to-day basis I receive, and my office receives, calls from people about benefits all the time. We depend as a constituency office on our partners, Advice NI, Mindwise, different people who actually provide the professional support and advice for people with regards to benefits. But the move to UC, given the fact that I believe it's up to 250,000 people will be moving in Northern Ireland from legacy benefits over to universal credit. That's a heck of a number of people to be moved over to universal credit at a time that I'm sad to say the poorest people in Northern Ireland are already being hit by the cost of living crisis. The 5-week wait is something that I don't know how Northern Ireland's poorest people will cope. And that's not just people who depend on benefits, it's people who are in work as well. It will come at a time as well when we face an unprecedented budget in Northern Ireland, and many in the community and voluntary sector have met with the Secretary of State and have heard from permanent secretaries that they're trying their best at this point in time to work through what the budget will mean and what the reductions will mean to people on the ground. And this will all come at a time when the move to universal credit is rolling out across Northern Ireland. This economic crisis is hitting all of us. This economic crisis is causing real harm in our communities. And that's why it is vitally important, I feel, that our independent advice sector is there to help people move forward, to get that support at the right time during this move to universal credit. I'm also very concerned all parties, so I'm not just saying this on behalf of the Alliance Party, but all parties meet and have met with the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Communities. And we have discussed the impacts of budgets, but we've also discussed how the Department for Work and Pensions have invested additional money in services for universal credit across in England, but Northern Ireland has not received the same amount of funding here. So we may not have the number of universal credit officers available to actually handle the transfer. And what we don't want to happen is that the 5-week wait all of a sudden extends to 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and we run out of parity. And we have people then who are falling further behind in rent and haven't got any benefits in place to help them get through what potentially is the run-up to Christmas. The report today does highlight concerns and issues brought forward by advisors, existing universal credit claimants, and from the Legacy Benefit Claimant Survey. That's grassroots people. That's people who can say honestly and openly what it's actually like. Now, this all will come at a time when we don't know what the transitional protections will be. Originally, universal credit, the move to universal credit, was going to come alongside traditional or transitional protections that would have seen people on legacy benefits maintain that level of benefit until such times as universal credit would catch up. However, as we move forward to the move to universal credit, we have heard from Westminster that that will not be the case. As soon as anyone has a significant difference in their life, the transitional protection will stop. It's not a long-term solution. So today, I very much welcome this report. It comes at a very timely, a timely time, I was going to say. Yesterday, the Cliff Edge Coalition brought forward a number of asks that they have brought out to further help people living in poverty. Today, we will hear this report on the issues that need to be considered as we move forward with move to universal credit. The juggernaut is coming, and for the advice sector that means an increased workload for a sector that's already overburdened by the number of people under pressure. We need funding. We need a government back in Northern Ireland. We need a budget that we can work with, and at the moment we're leaving that to permanent secretaries who don't have the capacity to make any big changes. I feel for them completely. I don't think it should be in their hands to have to even cope with this. I think that there should be a government back, and that's not me being political. This is me as a person who grew up on a family on benefits in a housing executive house. Day in, day out, James, who's here in the audience, from my constituency office, and myself and Fiona, we deal with people who are living with the impact of the cost of living crisis, who deal with the impact of loss of benefits and sanctions, and the impact of moving to universal credit, and the pressure of having private rents going up, and the pressure of school uniforms going through the roof. It's day and daily, we see it. I need help from the independent advice sector. I need to know the issues, and this report will provide them for me, how we could possibly mitigate against some of the worst impacts of the move to UC in Northern Ireland. So I very much welcome this report today. I'm hoping that the issues will help to bring forward solutions at some point. But for now, I'll hand over, I believe, then to Bridget Meehan, Policy Officer, who's going to take us through the research findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And actually, some phrases that strike me there: the juggernaut is coming, and if it terrifies you, I mean, I'm thinking of the people out there as well too. So it's part of this is about raising awareness and try to release that pressure, that stress, and the feelings that people will be under. 250,000 claims, according to our research report in our briefing paper last year that's up on our website. Some people will have multiple claims, but in some senses that increases the risk because they have multiple claims moving to a single benefit then. So that's why we have to be careful with this initiative. In many ways, actually, we're now at half time regarding welfare reform. We've just about survived DLA to PIP reassessment, and I'm thinking with my advisor hat on here, and the many other changes, and many would say the cuts to the social security system. We've had the wind at our backs with the Avison mitigations, and of course those mitigations need to stick as people move from, in particular, housing benefit across onto universal credit. And just on the mitigations, I think a big thank you is in order to our previous minister for all the work in addressing the mitigations cliff edge, passing some crucial pieces of legislation back in March 22. And how crucial is that now with all the current uncertainty over the Assembly and budgets and so on, to have those mitigations in legislation budgeted and in place for people. But as Kelly said, turning now to our move to UC research, I'd like to invite Bridget, Advice on Eyes Policy and Engagement Officer, who's conducted this important piece of research, to present her work. Over to you, Bridget.
Okay, so this research, it's all in the report, and the report's available on the website. But I'll just give a very kind of high-level summary of it here, just to kind of give you a sense of some of the things that we found and some of the recommendations we have. So basically, the research was a survey that we did that had 3 parts. We surveyed the advisors that work in the advice sector. We surveyed legacy benefit claimants that are going to be moving to UC, and then we surveyed existing UC claimants that are already on UC, obviously, and asking them about their experiences of having applied for and being on UC. And with advisors and legacy benefit claimants, we were asking them about what their concerns were going to be about this move. We conducted the survey over the last 2 months of last year, and we got in over 200 responses. And as Kelly, I think, said, this is information from the grassroots. This is information from people firsthand, their lived experiences of being on UC and how they feel about having to move to it, and also what advisors are experiencing. So we think that this could be a useful piece of research in informing the move to UC and making it as, I suppose, as painless as possible. I'll go through the findings first, and then I'll get to the recommendations, and I'll talk about the findings from the 3 parts of the advisor part, the legacy benefit claimant part, and the UC claimant part. So I'm not sure if it's that visible, but there's kind of, these are just a summary of the findings, but managing financially, that was one of the big concerns that advisors came back to us with. They were saying that about 50% of them are concerned about how people are going to manage financially when they have to wait for UC. So it could be a 5-week or more wait. It might be less, but the point is people will have to wait for their first payment, and that they may struggle with that. In fact, the evidence already shows that people do struggle with that. And this is going to be particularly so for tax credit claimants who are the first to be moved to UC, and that's already happening. And these people won't have had any interface with the benefit system, more than likely, at all. So this is going to be a big change for them. Then other concerns advisors had were around the ability of people to budget while they were waiting for the first payment, and then how all that was going to impact on people maybe falling into rent arrears, getting into debt, and so on. Accessibility is another big one, because UC is an online benefit, and that's something that's going to be new to a lot of people, a bit of a culture shock. So advisors were concerned about people who have poor digital skills, how they're going to manage applying for the UC and then maintaining it, and then claimants with poor physical and mental health, how this online benefit was going to impact them. Then claimants in rural areas who maybe have limited access to the internet. You know, this is an online benefit, so what does that mean for them? And advisors are also concerned for themselves about having really robust communication channels with DFC and with UC staff so that they would be able to respond in real time to concerns or cases that were quite serious or for vulnerable people. So there's quite a few findings there from the advisors, but obviously there's more in the report. Just to go through the findings then from the legacy benefit claimants. So these are people who are going to be moved to UC. What kind of concerns were they coming up with? Not surprisingly, finance was another one for them as well. 71% they're concerned about how they're going to manage financially while they wait for UC. That impact of waiting for the first payment, were they going to get into debt? Was there going to be overpayments? Was there going to be rent arrears? These are real concerns that people are feeling at the minute. They're also concerned about whether this would lose them money, maybe premiums that they're on currently, would they lose those, or maybe they would maybe not get transferred over. Again, more concerns from them. And childcare costs as well from tax credit claimants, the fact that they have to pay these up front, how is that going to impact them? Could that lead to having to borrow and get into debt? The process as well was also another issue for claimants. 47% worried about how they were going to cope with this digital process, how they were going to manage the journal, which is the online communication tool that you have once you're on UC to communicate with the department. People also concerned about having not much access to the internet or even digital devices to be able to maintain their claim, and then confusion and lack of certainty about the process itself, when they should apply, payment dates and so on. Now, some of these things may be resolved, and I know DFC are looking at this as well, but these are the findings, these are the things people are worried about. And then there's just some others as well, just to say people are concerned about the impact it's going to have on them. Maybe the lack of interpreting services as well is another issue. These aren't always available in the local centres. And then fears that the independent advice sector wouldn't have the capacity to deal with them, a sector that's already struggling with the capacity at the minute. Then the findings from the UC claimants. So these aren't people who are saying this is what we might be worried about or what might happen in the future. This is their experience of being on UC. So the process, for them, many of them had problems with applying online. They found it difficult and confusing. They had problems trying to get their ID verified and to provide the kind of evidence that they needed to make their application. Difficulties as well accessing interpreters, that was another one that came up again. Having a worry all the time about being sanctioned or suspended and their money being stopped, and then difficulties complying with the claimant commitment. Finance as well is another massive issue that they experienced. Some of them talked about how they didn't actually get the information about the kind of financial support that's available. So there are supports, some supports there available to try and get you over that to the first payment, like the contingency fund, but not being told about them means that you don't even know that they're available to you. Waiting on the first payment was a big problem. It meant debt for most people. So you can see some of the statistics that we came back with from the responses that we got. So the UC advance, which is a loan, 69% of the respondents had to take out one of those. 47% ended up borrowing either from family or friends or elsewhere. And 53% got into rent arrears. So that's fairly significant amounts of debt that people are getting into while they wait for that first payment. There was difficulties around paying upfront childcare costs, and difficulties then living on the payments once people were actually on UC. So the payments, we would say, are not enough anyway. They haven't kept up with inflation, but then you might have deductions from that. You might have debts that you're going to be paying back, rent arrears, overpayments. All of these things then take money out of that monthly payment, creating even more financial hardship for people. The digital support, obviously, that was one that you see claimants talked about having difficulties with. So being able to access digital devices and the internet, severely problematic. Not being aware of online safety and how safe it was for them to be conducting their business online, and then difficulties with that journal, that communication tool, not being able to maybe access it on a daily basis, not receiving prompt enough responses from the department for queries that they had, not being able to maybe keep up with the volume of messages or even understand some of the messages that they were getting through. So again, this is proven to be a problem for some people. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the findings, and from that we I suppose wanted to see how we could maybe mitigate some of these problems, make sure that this move to UC, this transition would be as smooth as possible for people, would not introduce that kind of hardship for them. So we've identified a number of recommendations. I'm going to give a summary again of these, but the report has the full detail. So the recommendations first around the process. So we recommend that there's a clearly mapped out journey for the claimants. DFC will expect we'll have this, but that journey needs to show everything that the claimant has to do, what they should expect, when things should happen. We also recommend extending the welfare reform project so that there's that extra support there for more vulnerable claimants, and then ensure that there's interpreting services available on demand. And we would also recommend that support to the independent advice sector is increased, because we believe that this big change, this move to UC, is going to create a lot more work for the sector, and there's just that worry that the resources might not be there to deal with that adequately. So you can see there from just some of the stats from the survey, because we did ask people about how much they used or depended on independent advice, and you can see there that UC claimants that were part of the survey, 81% said that they needed advice to help make their claim, 83% needed advice to get through to the first payment, 89% needed advice to help maintain their claim, and then 89% needed help to seek financial support once they were in receipt of UC. So there's a lot of dependence there on the independent advice sector. And then 82% of legacy claimants said that they would be looking for independent advice when they would move to UC. Around finance then, which that really came out strongly in the findings, we recommend having an automatic payment of the contingency fund for tax credit claimants. They're going to be the first to move over. They're probably not going to have had any experience of the benefit system before. And then just getting them through to that first payment, this is a recommendation we think would help. Also clearly signposting claimants to any kind of financial support that's available, the non-refundable type, not the loans that they have to pay back. And there are a number of those, but it's making sure the claimants are aware of them. We also would recommend that HMRC work very closely with the department in order to avoid any tax credit overpayments. So making sure that once somebody applies for universal credit, that the tax credit stops, they don't continue to pay them, and then that's an overpayment that will be left at the door of the claimant. We'd like to emphasise, see that the message emphasise that the UC advance is a loan, and it has strict repayment rules around it. Again, ensuring that there's more efficient and timely access to the contingency fund and other financial supports, so that when people apply, that they get a pretty immediate response and get that support they need. Providing upfront childcare costs when during that transition to tax credits is also something we'd recommend. And applying discretion when it comes to an overpayment that is due to official error. Can discretion be applied there in the recovery of those those overpayments? There's a mechanism called waivers and write-offs. Again, this would be an option for people to maybe get their debt waived or written off, and we would like to make sure that people are aware of that option and can access it. And then we've also recommended that there are prepaid pay-as-you-go SIM cards for claimants who need them. I should have said that some of these some of these recommendations do not have a price tag with them. They are really about process and about how things are managed that way. And some of them do have maybe monetary value associated with them, but not all of them. And definitely a lot of these could be implemented without requiring any extra funding. Staff then, we recommend that all the appropriate training is given to staff across the board, from UC staff to jobs and benefits offices to make the call staff. And we would like to make sure that there's really good, robust communication channels between the advisors in the sector and the department. We do have good communication channels at the minute, but I suppose it's about making them as robust as they possibly can be, and maybe having some more dedicated channels of communication as well, as we move into this, the move to UC. So there's some suggestions there for advisors having access to the client journal with the client's consent, but that would actually help speed up some of the work that they have to do for particular cases. Also having a direct line of contact for advisors with the department, maybe a dedicated hotline for the move to UC, an online chat facility, and an escalation route. And there is an escalation route there that we do use, but yeah, it's about making that more robust, maybe making it more dedicated to this particular process. We're also recommending that some make the call staff could be redeployed to work more symbiotically with the sector as we go through this process, and also implementing adequate safeguard protections for vulnerable claimants. And then again, it's about trying to provide some additional funding to the independent advice sector to recruit more advisors, because we do believe that there's certainly going to be more personnel needed for this. This is the final slide, just to go through some of the communication recommendations. We'd like to, for it to be made clear that claimants can lose their transitional protection, that's not something that they're going to be guaranteed the whole way through, that if they have a significant change of circumstances, that can be taken from them. Also to make it clear that the timing of the claim is all important, getting that message out that if they want to avail of the run-on in benefits, ensure there's no gap, that they have to claim within the time frame that they've been asked to do so. We'd also recommend that DFC consult with the sector if they have any public-facing information going out, so that we can give some feedback to make sure it's as effective as it possibly can be. DFC already started doing that, so let's hope it continues. And then we'd also like to have regular dedicated monitoring sessions with the department, so that we can inform them in real time about problems we're noticing, or things that are going well, or however it's whatever the case is, and that they can give us updates in real time too. Just the last few ones there, we would recommend that claimants are online ready, so that they have internet access, device access, email access, and have enough knowledge about online safety to feel confident to manage their claim online. We'd also suggest providing opportunities for claimants to attend digital skills training, something that Advice and I could provide if the resources were made available. And then we recommend to promoting the Advice and I website, because we will have a dedicated section on Move to UC. We'll have lots of information there, and promoting that could be useful for people. And then the final one was just to provide Remove to UC awareness sessions for claimants and non-advisors. Again, something that Advice and I could provide. So that's just a very quick run through of the findings, the recommendations from the report. And as I said, it's available. The full report is available on the website. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Excuse me, and thank you for all the effort in compiling and doing that piece of research, which I think will be really, really important moving forward as we move towards people being called forward for move to universal credit. Comprehensive piece of research, in particular capturing the voices of claimants who will be impacted, and also the thoughts of advisors as well at the front line. And their concerns around finance and fears about getting into debt stand out for me. excess and most obviously fears about coping with the digital nature of making and maintaining a universal credit claim. And finally, well-being, how people will cope with greater conditionality, because what for one person might be considered continuous support could be constant pressure for another person. As with all concerns about what might feel like a leap into the unknown, especially for many who will not have the safety net of savings to fall back on, some may be well-founded, some of these fears may be well-founded, some may be dispelled or eased if only there was greater awareness of the process and the supports that are put in place as part of Move to UC. So that takes us to the next item on the agenda, and I'd like to invite Matt, our Information Officer, to introduce the Move to UC awareness sessions that Advice and I has developed. So over to you, Matt.
Good morning, folks. So I'm just here to speak briefly about, if you like, where we are looking to go with this process and with our input into that process over the coming months and years as this move to universal credit develops. So obviously we've heard so far about the way in which this process has impacted on our clients and through our advisors, the way in which that information is communicated to us. So what we wanted to ally that with was more information to build awareness and to build understanding within that wider community, not only of the people who are affected as people who are claiming these benefits, but also for those people who are working with them in a wide range of different community settings. So to that end, we put together an information and awareness session, and we're looking to promote that right out into the community, encouraging community organisations in particular to come forward and look to, to host and to engage with these sorts of information and awareness sessions so that we can really get the message out at as early a stage as possible about what to expect from the move to universal credit and to be able to start to continue that process of sharing the relevant information, because that's what is going to be crucial here, is understanding how things work as they are implemented, and likewise feeding that back into the process itself so that we can better understand where adaptations might need to be made and what sorts of support individual clients or claimants, however we want to refer to them, are going through that process. So what will that information session involve? A range of different things, but really it's pitched at the general public. It is not something that is designed for those who are specialist advisors. We have a fantastic training team at Advice NI who is perfectly placed to provide the specialist training that's necessary, and there will be plenty of that coming down the line in the next couple of years in relation to universal credit and the way in which that will be implemented. What this sort of information session is designed to do is to build that understanding of how universal credit works as a benefit and how moving on to that benefit as someone who already claims the existing, what we call legacy benefits, how that will work in practice. So what will the managed migration process be like, which is the official terminology for the move to universal credit? And the crucial thing there is that you will have to actually make a claim to universal credit as someone who's moving from whether that be tax credits or job seekers allowance, housing benefit or employment and support allowance. So how do you go about that process? We've heard about the digital by default aspect of this benefit, and that has its own implications as a consequence. So helping people to understand what they are going to need to do to be able to submit that claim. And likewise, the support that will be put in place by the department, and you're going to hear from Paddy Rooney, I'm sure, about the sorts of things that the department is looking to do there later on. But likewise from within the independent advice sector and how the expertise that we have within this sector can help to support people through this. On top of that, it's also thinking about what credit will be like. And this report includes a good deal of information about the experiences of people who have already moved outside of the managed migration process. because it's important to remember that there are lots of people who have already moved on to universal credit who have had to claim universal credit because of the nature of their circumstances. So there is a wealth of understanding and experience out there that we need to draw upon. And the information sessions will try to pull in some of that understanding, but likewise give people more information about how they should be dealing with that claim once they have made it. And then finally, we'll look at what other sorts of support services there might be, financial support, the way in which the system has certain safeguards built into it to some extent, how those work, how long they will last, and what people might need to be able to do, might need to think about if once those sorts of financial supports maybe run out or become less relevant to them. So it's a wide-ranging information session, but as we say, it's something that we are looking to pitch to the general public, to the wider community, rather than just within the independent advice sector itself. If that's something that your organisation or anyone you think would be interested in, then we'd encourage you to get onto the website. We have a page there where you can submit an expression of interest in hosting or being involved in one of these sessions. We'll do everything from that point then to engage with you and to ensure that we can deliver that awareness raising right across the community to make sure as many people as possible are ready for the move to universal credit as is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Excuse me, you said that really, really clearly. And just an admission of whatever you'll see on your seats, there's the cards and there's got the wee square QR codes and so on. Thank you, Bob. And it's only this week that I got my daughter to show me how do you use QR codes here. So you just hover your camera over it and automatically the QR code becomes a web link, and that will take you exactly to where Matt was explaining the expression of interest. So thank you for that. Also, all the information is available on the website. And it's also just worth reiterating that we're keen to work in partnership with our Advice NI member organisations across the network in terms of delivering these sessions locally. So happy to have a conversation with any member that's interested in working with us on that as well. And so that takes us neatly to our members' perspective on today's agenda. And first we have Thomas Henry from Mindwise, a law graduate now working with Mindwise as a senior mental health money advisor, supervising a team specialising in mental health clients with debt and welfare issues. We've already flagged the potential impact of move to UC on the well-being of claimants, so it's just right that we explore this issue in more detail. So over to you, Tom.
Good morning. My name is Tom Henry and I am a Senior Mental Health Money Advisor with Mindwise and part of the Mental Health and Money Advice UK. I've been an advisor for almost 15 years and was working in advice when UC was introduced into Northern Ireland in 2017 and was in fact an advisor in the area that it initially introduced into, and therefore at the coalface I'm very much aware of the initial difficulties UC present and with the right from its inception. We help and support clients throughout the whole of Northern Ireland with their mental health supports, welfare advice and debt advice. We are unique in that we are the only agency that deals with the client holistically, with one advisor helping and supporting the client with their debts, welfare supports and advice, and ensuring that the clients have their mental health and supports are in place. This is carried out by one advisor and it helps build up a relationship of trust so that the advisor can help and support the client. One of the areas that we help support the clients in is in relation to universal credit process itself. As I have already mentioned, all our clients have mental health difficulties and as such do struggle with the whole benefits system and in particular universal credit. We have found that clients are not only aware of the full application process, nor of the protections or mitigations that are in place, and therefore are not aware of what they should receive or should be advised upon when it comes to universal credit. Case in point, we have clients who come to us for advice after they have been moved over onto universal credit from income-based legacy benefits, and therefore should have had a 2-week run-on of their legacy benefits, meaning that the client does not have to need to wait for the usual 5 weeks for assessment, or more specifically, must wait 5 weeks without monies coming in. When we asked the client whether they were automatically got the 2-week run-on in payment, and this payment doesn't have to be paid back, they said that they've had to wait 5 weeks and they never get the run-on. So this is obviously an issue that we have to look at. At this stage, it's too late to do anything as the time has passed. So they've been through the process, so they can't go back in time, and the client has actually had to wait that 5 weeks. Checks and balances need to be in place within UC to prevent these situations happening, as this is something that UC are aware of and should ensure that the client is not financially disadvantaged, especially when protections are in place. Also, the client may have to ask for an advance of payments for the 5 weeks, which they have to pay back over the next 2 years, whereas had there been checks and balances in place, the client would only need a 3-week advance, therefore having less detriment. We also have mental health professionals refer clients to us whom have been taken into hospital either because they have had psychotic episodes or for their own safety, and as a result their UC ceases to be put into payment. We understand that the clients need to communicate with Universal Credit via the journal and vice versa. However, when our clients are on the mental health wards, they do not necessarily have access to their phones, or indeed are capable of accessing their phones to inform Universal Credit of their situation. I will go as far as to say that the client is not aware that they must contact Universal Credit to let them know that they are hospitalised for long durations of time due to their mental health. I know that in law, ignorance of the law is not a defence. In layperson's terms, this means that not knowing something exists is not a defence, as all the relevant information can be accessed, and in the case of Universal Credit, they have the official websites outlining what the clients need to do when they are hospitalised. Therefore, Universal Credit cannot be responsible if the client does not follow the process as outlined clearly by Universal Credit in black and white. At some point, Universal Credit will stop payments, and the client's UC is At some point, Universal Credit will stop, and the client's UC is only when the mental health social workers gets involved, that anyone becomes aware that their payments have stopped. Universal Credit advice states that the payments are normally paid indefinitely. However, this is not always the case. We must get involved and quote Section A to Universal Credit using their own legislation to get the payments reinstated. I know that in law, ignorance of the law is not a defence. In layperson's terms, this means that not knowing something exists is not a defence, as all the relevant information can be accessed and is, in this case of UC, they have UC legislation. Therefore, the client cannot be held responsible if UC does not follow the processes as outlined quite clearly by UC in black and white. Again, where are the checks and balances? When a client is not capable of informing UC within 24 hours, or most likely for weeks or months, we feel this becomes a safeguarding issue for Universal Credit. Is it a training issue? Are the case managers aware that there are mental health issues and that there may be a genuine reason why the client has not engaged or informed them of the change of circumstances? We have clients who are not aware of the mitigations that have been put in place in Northern Ireland. And in one instance, a couple, both who have severe mental health difficulties, were referred to us for a benefit check. And we found that as they had their Universal Credit Award reduced by the application of the social sector size criteria, or the bedroom tax to everyone else, they should have had the welfare supplementary payment paid. We eventually had to raise a social policy issue with the help and support of Bridget Meehan, and advice and I, just drop her in there. And as a result, the couple received their mitigation payments and the backdate for their payments that they already had made. There are lots of vulnerable clients who need help and support, and they're not aware that they are being disadvantaged by the system. Therefore, this needs to be put right from the beginning, so that no one is disadvantaged by the application or the move to universal credit. These are just some of the issues that we come across with our mental health clients, and feel that they need a voice within universal credit to make universal credit aware that they are dealing with people, not numbers. And those with mental health difficulties need safeguards in place to prevent them from falling through the cracks in the system. As I've already said, we as an organisation actively raise social policy issues through Advice and I, and have been successfully supported by Bridget, already mentioned, and Kevin in the roles within the policy. We would rather not have to raise social policy issues. However, it is a great support and resource that we as advisors can avail of to help with our clients. On the last page, one twist. But what about those who do not have who have not sought help, who are not aware that there is help? Who's going to help them? Change is inevitable. However, this change should not disadvantage the most vulnerable in our society. It must be aware of their existence and safeguard them with a seamless move to universal credit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. Well done. And certainly some important issues raised there. And I think for me, there is this issue of the claimant will have responsibilities out there, so that when it comes to move to UC, the claimant will have to actually make the claim for universal credit, if you like. But you rightly highlighted, Tom, that there will be departmental responsibilities there. There are sort of supports in place, the likes of the run-on and the mitigations, as you said. So it's about making people aware that those are in place, but then also ensuring that you can rely on those being in place whenever you do actually make that move to UC. And then maybe, for me then, there's the claimant, the department, and then there's almost this third additional layer, which is around our most vulnerable people, and what additional help and support that will need to be put in place for those people. And you rightly flagged the issue of safeguarding there as well. So thank you so much for that. Next, from our membership, we have Samantha Gallagher from Community Advice Fermanagh. Samantha is also a law graduate, worked as a paralegal in Belfast and Fermanagh, and is now Assistant Manager in Community Advice Fermanagh. We've already flagged issues around the likes of access, and no doubt Samantha is going to talk to us about clients in her area and the particular challenges they face. So over to you, Samantha. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today to talk about the rural impact of the move to UC. My name is Samantha Gallagher, and I'm the Assistant Manager and Welfare Rights Specialist at Community Advice Fermanagh. We provide frontline UC advice to the County of Fermanagh, which, for those of you who don't know, by geography is located on the western fringe. It largely borders Republic of Ireland, and it has a particularly rural landscape. So I want today to provide you with an insight into the issues that we face trying to navigate universal credit with our added rural complexities, which often feels forgotten about and, dare I say, neglected by those who both make and interpret social policy. So the Enniskillen JBO area has actually been selected to commence the discovery phase of this move to UC. So our area was chosen, I suppose, as a guinea pig, if you like, due to its isolation, rurality and deprivation levels. It was also chosen to afford learning to the department on rural complexities as we commence this journey of move to UC for Northern Ireland. But what will be important is that this learning filters right down to the decision makers, as Thomas alluded to, that the frontline UC staff are aware that their decisions and that this learning basically forms part of their decision making, because this is where the errors are occurring. In anticipation of this move to UC, we have already had important discussions with the Department for Communities, and we see this open communication as essential as the move progresses. And we've already identified to them a number of key grey areas which impact rural border counties. And I wanted today to go through a few of those just to highlight that not everyone will transition easily to UC. And I suppose my talk today is very much geared on tax credits to UC. There's lots of other areas of UC, I could talk all day about it, but my speech today is very much geared on tax credits to UC. So the first issue that we see in the rural border counties is the issue of capital. So the capital limit for universal credit is 16,000. For those on tax credits, there's no threshold. On the move to UC, the eligibility criteria is that a claimant in receipt of capital exceeding 16,000 will be permitted to move, but only for 1 year. After this year, if the claimant still has capital exceeding 16,000, they will no longer be eligible to claim universal credit. For us in Fermanagh, that mainly impacts farmers, in particular those part-time or small farmers, of which there are many in Fermanagh. This is income that they simply cannot afford to lose. Farmers in Fermanagh provide excellent quality meat for Northern Ireland, and they are what one might call asset rich and cash poor. Often the land in Fermanagh is of poor quality, and as such farmers are not always able to farm all of their land, and if they are not using their land for business purposes, then it cannot be disregarded, and therefore it will fall into the capital rules. So this is a real failure of the support system in Northern Ireland to both facilitate and understand this vital industry. It's also the failure of urban-based decision makers to understand a rural way of life and offer support to it. One of the very first claimants to be invited to move to UC in Fermanagh contacted us for help this week. His entitlement to work and tax credits is only £27 a week, but due to the value of his lands and the fact that he's unable to farm all of it, he will lose this entitlement after the first year, so he will no longer have support of benefits. I had to make specific queries of the department actually regarding capital, as even the migration notice itself currently says you can move if you have capital over 16,000, with no warning at all to those landowners or farmers who are moving blind into the UC abyss with no idea that their eligibility will actually be cut off 1 year in. The next issue that we see is that of free school meals. So the eligibility earnings threshold is lower under UC than it is of the tax credits, and there's no transitional protection for this shortfall. This will mean that some families who work, and I really must stress that this is the earnings threshold, it's families who work, and if they're working, they receive tax credits and have the benefit of free school meals. When they move to UC, they will no longer have this benefit. In Fermanagh, there are 4,962 children on the last count in 2022 in receipt of free school meals. Some of these children, who are our children, will be hungry because of the move to UC. These are families who work, whose income is low. They do not have the disposable income to pay for lunches, and they remain heavily impacted by the continuing rise in food prices. As there are a lot of families in the West in poorly paid jobs and there's notoriously little investment into the county in terms of this, families are reliant on this social security top-up and what should have been a safety net for them. UC staff and indeed the advice sector will need to be mindful of this loss. What is difficult is what is the current solution? Do we send this working family to a food bank? When we originally asked the department for clarity on the protections for those transitioning from tax credits with free school meals, they advised us that they were protected, but more recently this information has changed and they're not protected. So I cannot stress enough that we need to be all singing off the same hymn sheet if we have any hope of transitioning people over safely. There needs to be a realisation that decision making on this level is the difference in a child being fed a hot meal or not. Which feeds me nicely then into the next issue that we face, and that's that of the worker profile in Fermanagh. It's a little bit different to what one might experience elsewhere in Northern Ireland. So we have around 3 to 4 large employers in Fermanagh, and the rest tend to be small businesses and family-run enterprises. There's a lot of seasonal or casual work, cross-border work, part-time work to include 0-hour contracts, and we still even have some small employers that pay below minimum wage and provide no contracts at all. So most workers in Fermanagh are still paid weekly, and this had no relevance to tax credits, but sadly it will impact UC. If a claimant has 5 weekly wage payments in one UC assessment period, then their UC will be reduced the following month. And there's a real lack of understanding amongst claimants on this, and it's something that we in the advice sector are continuously needing to explain. UC staff, particularly those in the service centres operating the journal explanations, need to provide better, more coherent explanations to claimants, because there's a real risk with UC being digital that the person at the end of the screen is forgotten about and seen only as a national insurance number. In addition, we regularly see delays by Fermanagh employers in reporting earnings to HMRC. They don't seem to be aware that their actions by way of late reporting might impact an employee's UC entitlement, and this is due to the real-time and monthly nature of the benefit. So, for example, we recently had a single-parent family with mum working for a small employer in Fermanagh. They reported her earnings late at Christmas in 2022, and she had an overpayment in January 2023. The unique geographical position of our county means that we deal with a lot of cross-border queries for frontier workers. HMRC had a dedicated complex case team, and whilst it was always difficult to contact them and to achieve a timely answer, at least they were well versed in cross-border rights and terminology. With UC, we're effectively starting from scratch. And this was evident recently when a lady I was assisting advised me that she had been refused the childcare element of universal credit for trying to use a provider in the Republic of Ireland. So we initially assisted her with appealing this decision by quoting the relevant legislation, which allows for an outside jurisdiction provider. But it was then decided by UC that the childcare provider would be considered, but they wanted proof that it was her closest provider. They sought maps of her local area to show that she couldn't use another provider in Northern Ireland. This is not in the legislation. So we had to work collaboratively with employers for childcare and via the UC forum to have the issue rectified, and the service centres were notified accordingly. It should not be the case that because something is unusual or unique to one area that a team isn't educated in it. The whole point of UC is that each case is unique. And so if a service centre is in charge of an area that borders Republic of Ireland or is a rural area or has another unique issue of any kind, then their education on UC should be tailored accordingly. Also, in relation then to the unique rural employment profile, is that we have a high level of self-employment in the area, and the move to UC will have huge operational difficulties in the reporting of self-employment income for UC purposes. With tax credits, an earnings estimate was submitted annually. With UC, the claimant is expected to upload their income and expenditure monthly. This is time-consuming, it's complex, and we're already seeing operational issues with this. For example, we recently assisted a couple who were both self-employed. He was a plumber and she was a registered childminder. They were both digitally literate, but they just struggled with the accounting side of things. To be fair, and in order to best assist them, Enniskillen and Jobs and Benefits Office commendably asked them to come in once a month to lodge their books, which was a great help. But it meant that both self-employed claimants were having to take time off work every month to lodge their accounts. For the registered childminder, this also meant that her service users were impacted. So this was operationally unsustainable, and despite ongoing eligibility for UC, this family have taken the difficult decision to come off the benefit as a supplement to their income. It's left them struggling. They're rationing the basics, and they're actually reducing their meals the last time that I spoke with them, which is just heartbreaking. The group that we are most concerned about, however, from our statistics in Fermanagh, they tend to be male, over the age of 55, and self-employed in either trade or farming. And that's usually because they don't have either the digital skills or accounting skills required to manage their UC claim. Departmental attitude to this group has historically been that a family member should help them. We do not and will not advocate this approach, and in fact we consider it dangerous. We assisted a lady in recent times on UC who was reliant on her daughter for the digital management of her claim. The lady's daughter became unwell and was hospitalised for a number of weeks. As such, the daughter was unable to attend to a required action on the journal, and UC stopped this lady's payments. That should never have been allowed to happen. This aforementioned vulnerable group are also heavily reliant on their accountant, and they are, for example, likely to have a shoebox full of receipts to produce to their accountant every end of year. Often their work is also seasonal, which means that they might earn more in the summer and less in the winter, and they will be penalised under UC for this because of how income is dealt with, and that's due to the surplus income rules and minimum income floor. It'll also be difficult, obviously, to navigate the shoebox full of receipts every month for both the claimant and any assisting accountant. So as a result, I have asked DFC for educational programmes to basically be rolled out to service providers impacted by UC. So not just the claimant. I don't think the claimant needs to be the only person educated on this. I think employers, businesses and accountants also need to be aware that their impact of the actions that they do, say for example the real-time information, their reporting of the earnings, etc., that they have that they're impacting the claimant's entitlement to UC. So at the last count, there were 3,200 families in Fermanagh on tax credits alone, equating to 2.7% of the population of the county. Our resources at Community Advice Fermanagh are stretched to the maximum dealing with the cost of living crisis, and we are seriously concerned that the third sector are being relied upon as the A&E of social security advice. We're already providing what we're calling firefighting levels of service, including having to operate a waiting list and triage system due to the volume of queries. It's something that we've never had to do before in our organisation. And this is really because we're already dealing with the impact felt by natural migration to UC. And that includes things like the 5-week wait, moving from tax credits to UC with debt attached to their claim, which seems to be the case in every transition. We're also dealing with delays in bedroom tax mitigation payments, which were supposed to be automatic, and this is causing debt and threat of eviction. We also continue to try and assist with operational issues. So for example, we recently assisted a mixed age couple who were naturally transitioning to UC as one had reached state pension age. They'd never owned a digital device. They live in an area of Fermanagh with no internet access at all. They both have physical ill health, and they were being asked to complete a 60-mile round trip from their village into the town of Enniskillen every 2 weeks on poorly maintained roads to see their work coach. Again, a failure to understand rural life. We often feel we're an afterthought in rural communities, especially those on the western fringe, as we listen to urban-based decision makers thinking that they understand rural life. We recently had a sit-down with Minister of State, who attempted to compare his constituency of Wickham to Fermanagh. Wickham, with its many bus routes, it's wonderful rail network and plentiful broadband, compared to Fermanagh, with no rail network of any kind, no broadband at all in some areas and extremely limited in others, and a bus route which runs once a day if you're lucky, but often usually only once a week. All of this is important to take account of when you're dealing with a benefit that has such a strong focus on full-time work. It is clear massive issues remain with universal credit. We ideally would have needed to have ironed those out before we commenced the move to UC. However, we've been left with no option due to the absence of a sitting government. It's also disheartening when you attend important meetings about huge issues such as poverty or the move to UC, and these are poorly attended by our MLAs. So look, if we can take anything from today, it's two things. One, from a practical perspective, it is going to be hard for those transitioning to universal credit for the myriad of reasons outlined today. Decisions need to be made by the department carefully and correctly at all times, with a realisation that their decisions have serious consequences, and education will be key for all service users in any capacity. And two, from a policy perspective, there may potentially be scenarios where people are better off under universal credit, but we know on the front line that these are few and far between. We will continue to push for the mitigations. We support the coalition. The transitional protection payments will help, but our communication and that of the departments will need to be clear and transparent that this protection is not available long term, because we must remember that UC, first and foremost, is an austerity policy. And really we need to be asking the question, where has the security gone in our social security system? Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Samantha. Samantha came up to me before the event started and says, do you know, my slot might be a little bit over 10 minutes or whatever, but I think we'll all agree that it was well worth every single second of it. So thank you so much, Samantha. And just if I can comment, I think both presentations touch on a number of important points, and maybe mainly the expertise and the commitment of those organisations in the network, the insights into some of the challenges that will face our clients in terms of move to UC, and how we can work with the department to try to address these challenges as best we can and not just settle for, oh well, it's just the way that it is. So when I mention the department, that takes us to our next speaker, who is Paddy Rooney. I've known Paddy for many, many years, I think starting when he was in state retirement pension, but I know he was in the agency even long before that. Employment and Support Allowance, now elevated to Deputy Secretary, so I'm surprised you even still answer my emails at all now, Paddy, but I'm thank you so much that you do. So, and part of your many areas of responsibility is the delivery of working age benefits, and then that includes universal credit operations. So we appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Paddy, and maybe give us an update on move to UC from the department's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Kevin, for your introduction and for the invite to today's event. We have known each other for many, many years. For those of you who don't know me, I am Paddy Rooney. I'm currently the Deputy Secretary for our Work and Health Group within the department, and that means I have responsibility for the delivery of our working age benefits, which includes Universal Credit, and also the Universal Credit Programme team who are responsible for the move to UC, the final phase of UC implementation here in Northern Ireland. Just a wee bit more about my background. This is my 40th year in the civil service. I've spent most of that time in this department, working right through from supplementary benefits, single payments, unemployment benefit. Some of you will be familiar with that. Some of you won't. I wish I wasn't, because that gives my age away. But 40 years delivering welfare across Northern Ireland in many different places, many different offices, and always a commitment to do that in the best possible way we can. Today presents a brilliant opportunity for us to continue what I believe is our fantastic engagement and close working in our collective vision to help, support and protect the most vulnerable. In terms of Universal Credit, we are absolutely committed to engaging with you, and I just wanted to take a minute to thank all of you for your willingness to share those lived experiences with us, to help us understand, to help us improve and to help us evolve the service that we deliver. The engagement that we have through our Trusted Partnership Forum and that Frontline Advisor Forum is invaluable to us, and I hope it is to you too. For the move to UC, you will know engagement began well over a year ago when DWP started talking about what they were going to do, the discovery exercise they were going to commence. And we started thinking about, well, what's our plans? How are we going to do this? What way are we going to deliver this in Northern Ireland? And that engagement with you and the advice sector started way back then. That engagement has really ramped up over the last number of months, with various events in January, various events in March, and again the beginning of April. These events have enabled us to share our customer journey plans, samples of the migration notice letter and their reminders, and the dedicated content that we now have on NI Direct. In preparation for the beginning of our discovery exercise, we have also engaged with the MLAs and key stakeholders at a local level, and that's really important for us. And I can assure you that I and the team are absolutely committed to continuing this regular engagement through discovery and beyond. So where are we now? Well, in Northern Ireland, we have around 115,000 people to migrate to Universal Credit. About 60,000 of that relates to our ESSA caseload. And you will know from the Chancellor's announcement late last year that ESSA will not move across to UC until April 28. The remaining 55,000 people will move by March 2025. But before moving, what we wanted to do was understand and try to get a bit more understanding about what it meant for people to move across to Universal Credit. So we wanted to complete a discovery phase. And whilst we have come a long way since the implementation of Universal Credit in 2017, and we continue to learn every day from the lived experiences that you share with us, we do recognise that this may be difficult for some people. The move will increase anxiety and perhaps stress for those people who are facing that move. But our discovery exercise will therefore provide us with a valuable learning about how we can better help people through the migration process. And I know from discussions with Kevin and Bridget, and from what we've already heard today, that our collective aim is to provide the safest and best possible journey for all. That's why our discovery exercise, our joint collaboration and engagement, and our collective learning, including from this survey, is really so important for all of us. So our discovery exercise commenced on the 17th of April. So just to give you an update on that, since then, 500 people in receipt of tax credits only and no other benefits received a migration notice letter from the Department for Communities telling them they need to claim Universal Credit. 250 of those live in the Andersonstown Jobs and Benefits Office area, and as Samantha told us earlier, 250 live in the Enniskillen Jobs and Benefit Office area. That means we can learn from people living in both urban and rural areas. They will all have 3 months to make a claim to Universal Credit, and support is available via a dedicated Move to UC telephony team. There's help and support at the local Jobs and Benefit Office, and we have a dedicated web page on the NI Direct. And our migration notice letter also signposts to Advice NI, to Housing Rights and to Money Helper. To date, over 30 people have made a claim, but it's far too early to draw any conclusions from any of that, or to share any particular findings. We are only a few weeks in. But we will continue to engage, and we will continue to update you when meaningful information and analysis becomes available. Looking further ahead, we will use the learning from Discovery to plan how we and when we scale up to complete the migration process. You will know that DWP have already commenced their scaling up, so we will also have that opportunity to continue learning from their experiences. Again, we want to use all of the learning available to help us ensure that the right supports are in place for people at the right time and in the right way. In finishing, I just wanted to express my real sincere thanks to Kevin and Bridget, who really kindly presented the findings and recommendations from the report to me and my senior team in late March. And thanks again to Kevin for the invite and the opportunity to speak to you for your continued help and support in helping us to deliver the best possible service we can. I can absolutely assure you, me and my team are absolutely committed to engaging, to listening to you throughout the Discovery exercise and all of our future migration plans. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks very much, Paddy. I'll maybe ask Paddy, Bridget and Samantha and Thomas just to take a seat at the top table or whatever. We have a bit of a panel discussion now. It's more or less just to give you, the audience, a chance to reflect on what you've heard. So please feel free to put up your hand and let us know what you think about what you've heard this morning. Just while you're thinking about that, just to reflect on what Paddy was saying there around, I can testify to the close engagement and communication. Bridget will keep me right, but I think there's another forum actually in the diary for next week or whatever. So there's lots of forums and lots of meetings and communications and so on. So we are heavily involved with the department, and our goals are to try and make sure that this, as you said, Paddy, is the safest and best journey possible for all. And I think we're holding each other to account on that one, I think, and touch wood, all will go well with that one. So if anybody has any comments or would like to contribute in this part of the session, feel free to put up your hand, and we've got mics and stuff here. Yes, come on ahead. Yeah. Or if you have any questions or comments for Bridget or Tom or Samantha, in particular client groups and so on. I know there's a lot of information there to absorb. It is a huge undertaking, and you may want to go and log on to the website, download the report and digest it or whatever, and come back to us if you have any comments and so on. Yes.
Thank you very thank you very much. My question is for Samantha. Samantha, the learning that you're bringing forward is incredibly useful. I'm just wondering, even with Paddy, how are you able to feed through that information, the learning from it? And Paddy, is there anything that can be done? We know that this is a Westminster programme, but is there anything that we can do locally to answer some of the problems that Samantha has identified?
Yes, we have had some engagement already. The department have very kindly come down to Enniskillen to speak with us, and we were able to outline some of those issues that we have been seeing already from the natural migration, which was very useful. And I myself had a one-to-one with the UC team just to outline, I suppose, what our concerns would be in regard to the tax credits claimants moving to UC. So I would foresee that level of engagement continuing as we move the other legacy benefits over. I do feel that we do work well. I'm very grateful that they do listen and respect what we do have to say, because it is learned experience. We are on the ground, we are at grassroots, and the key thing with universal credit is it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's very, very much tailored per claimant. So you don't really see how it affects someone until it's actually operational completely. So those learned experiences will be key, and thank God through Advice and I we do have very good connections with the department, so long may that continue.
And it will, Kelly, because it's really so important for us. As I said, our absolute commitment is to work collectively, collaboratively, to do the best possible service that we can, and that's why we picked Enniskillen and JBO and Andersonstown to get that experience of understanding the urban versus the rural. And we know there are particular complexities in both areas. But as Samantha said, we have met with Samantha. We will continue to engage at a local level, and we will do this not just through discovery, but continuing on when we get to full migration, when that happens. But we do this every day. We do this every single day. We talk to advice and advisors across the country every single day about issues that are raised and barriers that people are facing when they're claiming universal credit. And so our commitment is not just about Move to UC or discovery or future migration. Our commitment is in delivering universal credit every single day in Northern Ireland and engaging with everyone that we need to engage to make that a better journey.
So say that Paddy was talking to me before the session started, he has a genuine another commitment that he has to be later this morning as well. So manage your time as you see fit, Paddy, or whatever, and feel free if and when you need to go. Any other comments or anything else anyone would like to say? Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if I need that either. I just want to I mean, I understand that, you know, the people in the departments and the people in the community are working really well together, and we've all got the same, we want the same goal, that people are looked after and treated. But the fundamental problem is the actual product isn't fit for purpose. There isn't enough money. People are, we're living in a society now which I never dreamt that I would ever see, that people they're out working every day are using food banks and quite openly telling us that, not just in our offices, but you know, they're quite happy to come forward in the public and say there's nothing else. I listened to a young nurse, for example, on the news the other night saying that, you know, she was going to food bank in Belfast. A nurse, so there's something very fundamentally wrong. So that's, you know, and me or you, unfortunately, isn't going to make that better. We need a higher voice somewhere to say this is not enough. This money will not keep a single person claiming a benefit, living independently, will not survive, cannot survive on the money that's given out. So that, I mean, to me, that underlying, that needs to be looked at. Also huge, I manage a service within Mindwise, we're mental health debt and money advice service. We have people who are very complex mental health needs, long-term hospitals. You see, again, it's the product. It's not working for them. I'll do everything I can. You'll do everything that you can. Collectively, we'll work. You know, that will take a long time to try to sort someone's basic human right, just to get them an income. But there doesn't seem to be anybody there that will listen to that specialism, that problem area. And you can apply that maybe to elderly, you can apply that to physical disability. But I agree we're all trying to help, but I think that somebody needs to be coming in underneath and raising the roof and saying this ain't working, this has got to change. And I know that's not probably for here and now, but I do think people just need to be mindful that the problems that we're coming across, and the people who are, the children that are hungry. I mean, a child to go to bed at night hungry is just awful. But that's reality in our community. I live in a rural community. I volunteer with a rural charity. We are inundated for people who need food, the people who need oil, and this is not just about people who are unemployed or claiming benefits, far from it. So I have huge concerns going forward, but I think unless it's looked at foundation, it's not going to change.
Thank you. I mean, it's something as well was stating. I think it is above our panel and everybody here today, but it's well worth reminding. We have a decade of austerity, we have years of a benefit freeze. Income adequacy is just it's the big issue, and maybe just chickens are coming home to roost now with all of that, and hence then government have had to make cost of living payments and put £20 temporarily into UC and so on. Do all of these temporary measures simply because income just aren't adequate, and hopefully online, if the Secretary of State or the Prime Minister our local politicians are listening, things are serious out there, and they need to be at work and making things better for the people. I quoted Eileen Evison at a meeting that I was at last week or whatever. What could be more important than the suffering of our people? And I think they need to keep that up front and centre in their minds at the moment. Any other comments? There's just behind you there, Ryan.
Hi, we're seeing delays to applications for pension credit taking 2 to 4 months. We're seeing rate rebate claims, I know that's Department of Finance, are taking 7 to 8 months for a bog standard application. How are you going to be prepared for the ramp up of people moving to universal credit? Are you going to have the staff ready to process things in a duly time?
I think the answer to that question is yes. That's our plans, is to ensure that we have sufficient staff to deal with the cases that will come in, and that's where we are.
Thank you, Pat. No, I understand completely, and thank you for your contribution this morning, Paddy. No, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
And I think I saw another hand down towards the back there.
Probably more for Paddy, but I realise he's leaving now. It's Paula Beatty. I'm from RNIB, and we work with people who are blind and partially sighted. We've been approached by our colleagues in the optometry sector to say they're very concerned about people who've gone on to universal credit who previously would have had access to a free eye test. That process has now become much more cumbersome. And secondly, that there's an inequality in claimants here on universal credit as opposed to claimants in GB in terms of access to a free eye test once they're on universal credit. So I really just wanted to raise that because it's an issue of major concern for people who are living with sight loss.
Thank you for flagging that. Kelly?
I can answer that. Absolutely, the part of the committees like this, or the committee for committees like this before. We're planning, to have a change to the legislation to bring us in line with the rest of the UK, because someone going and having dental treatment or an eyesight test and then not understanding that they didn't fill out the form, so then they're charged £75 and they can't afford that. That's 2 weeks worth of money gone. So we know about that, but we'll need a government here, unfortunately, to take that forward.
Because been approached by Specsavers and another optometry group as well, so that's really useful, Kelly. Thank you.
And I would broaden that out into passporting more generally, and I think Samantha talked about free school meals and so on. So for some people that may not be actually entirely straightforward as well. So I don't know if anybody in the panel wanted to say a little bit more about passporting or and health services charges more generally. I think we did some work on that.
Yeah, the passport and benefits are not automatic now under UC, so that's going to be maybe a surprise to people. And we have come across claimants who thought they could go ahead and get things like eye tests and then found that they weren't eligible for the full cost or even partial costs, and then they had that cost to deal with themselves. So we did contact the health committee, the health department, and communities as well, and we raised this with them as an issue. So maybe some of that, Kelly, is the workings of what you're doing now, because we had identified this as a problem. So I suppose it's waiting for that legislation to change, but sooner the better. But yeah.
I thought I saw another hand. Oh, sorry. Did I see another hand down there? If everyone is content enough, then what I will do, I will invite our Chief Executive, Bob Strong, just to make some concluding remarks and draw the session to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great that you handled all that, Kevin. I had a thing to do today, so that's fantastic. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm not going to detain you. Just a few things that stuck out for me today. I think, we are in fairly dire times in terms of the issues and the struggles that people are having to maintain their a basic kind of living standard, and things are really tough out there. Our sector, it works tirelessly, and I know the rates of burnout that are happening out there. So my plea, I was at a meeting yesterday with the Secretary of State, who when asked the question what influence and power he had to change things here, said, "I have none whatsoever. I have no powers and I have very limited influence. And if you need to change anything, go and talk to your permanent secretary." Well, I'm talking to the permanent secretary now in DFC, if he's listening, to say that, you know, advice services will become a very, very, very critical, very, very critical plank of this move to UC, but also more generally, just in terms of helping people through what are very turbulent times for them in terms of their income and making ends meet generally. So cost of food, etc., etc. We all know what the issues are. So we're talking about universal credit, massive change in the context of all of that. And what we want to make sure, and I was heartened by what Paddy said about, you know, working together, what we want to do is make sure that people don't fall through that safety net. But although I like the comment that almost we are seen as that kind of, you know, the last resort net, that where people get picked up, you know, and I don't think in a sense that that's necessarily what our total role should be. We're a civic society organisation. We're here to make things better for people. The system keeps, not the system, the decisions, the policies, the changes in policies, the new benefit rules, all of those things make it very, very complex. And that's another area we're hearing from advisors about, the complexity of things. So the smoother, the more simpler we can make this process for people, the better. So I'm hoping that the department are listening and have taken all of those messages on board, and I do get a good sense that they have. I suppose the other stuff that really stood out for me was the mental health experiences and people who, you know, really struggling. And I know I've got experience of that in my own family, and you know, it would be beyond many people I know with mental health difficulties to be able to be maintaining a journal, to, you know, having to get up at certain times to do certain things and all the rest of it. So we do need understanding, and we do need flexibility. The idea of training for DFC staff, frontline staff around some of these issues, I think is also very important, to build in sensitivity, to ensure that safeguarding, whilst it's not necessarily a statutory requirement in terms of benefits, but that people are aware that there could be safeguarding issues there when they're dealing with individual clients. I thought, Samantha, your run through of all of the things that you know, that your experience in the rural context was very, very, very helpful. Some of those things I'd never thought about, and I hadn't heard about the free school meals, etc. So, all very, very, very useful information, and that's something that will continue to feed back to the department. So it only remains for me just to, I suppose, to say, Advice NI will continue to batter down the doors. Although there's no doors here, at least Kelly's opened the door for us today, and try and get some traction on these particular kinds of issues. But as I say, not just this one, there are many of them, and there are many priorities, and there isn't enough money to go around, as we always know. But it shouldn't stop us from, you know, representing the interests and the views of the people who we serve and the politicians serve as well. So we will continue to, you know, make representations. We'll continue to engage with the department and others on the process of UC. And someone mentioned about rates. There could be difficulties down the line that we don't see, unexpected consequences with some of this stuff, and we need to be able to be flexible. And once we recognise there's a problem that impacts, then, you know, having the agility to be able to get in there quickly and change it is really important, because I do foresee problems coming down the line. I also think if we use our imagination, you know, Advice and I've been calling for a universal basic income for a long time now. And we think all this means testing and all of this nonsense should go out the window. And that people should be giving a basic income. And if you think about universal credit, it's not far off that. you know, if they would just leave it alone and stop tampering with it and make it more generous, it could actually transform into a universal basic income without all of the, you know, you have to go on to online and do a journal, and you have to do that. And in other countries we know about, UBI has been successful. It's increased entrepreneurship, employment, local facilities, all of that kind of stuff. So please think outside the box on all of those things, and we need to get our politicians here to start to think seriously. Is the English social security system necessarily the best social security system for Northern Ireland? I don't think so. Because we have a government over there who will always, you know, treat the poor as skivers and strangers, and that ideology runs very deep in British politics. But it doesn't run so deep here, and I think we need to do something about that. So finally, anyway, that's my wee rant over. Just to thank everyone, thank all the speakers, the team in Advice NI, the policy work who produced the report, done a marvellous job. And to say the reports, you'll have a brief version there. The full report is on the website, and you're welcome to go into that. And I would reiterate Matt's message: if there's anything around awareness sessions or anything you want, please do register for those, and we'll try to facilitate those as best we can. So thank you to all the speakers, also to the communications team in Advice NI who put all this together, all of the reports and all of that. And finally, to Kelly for hosting us today. Thank you very much for that. And to Paddy from the department, obviously, who, you know, it's not easy. I suppose when you think you're coming into something, you're going to get eggs thrown at you. You know? So thanks to him and his team for that, and to all our panellists and speakers as well, who I think made a marvellous contribution this morning. And keep a wee eye out for all the stuff on social media and the little cartoons that we're kind of putting out, and we're wanting to get this message out so that people are clear about what it means for them. So thank you very much, folks. I think there might be some tea or coffee or something up there for you. So thanks very much for coming.